Hello, this is Jason McManus with BIS, and in today's presentation we are going to show you how you can use the data integration platform Grouper to process files and migrate them from an email environment over to Box. So in this particular use case, we're going to be using Exchange 365. We will be connecting to it through EWS or Exchange Web Services, and we'll be monitoring a specific box and processing, or I shouldn't say box, a specific folder within this environment and processing all incoming attachments that come in. So what you're seeing right now is my Outlook, and I'm just pulling this up to give you a visualization of this particular folder that we've created called Grouper Demo Files here in my Exchange environment, and some of the files that I emailed to myself. So inside of Grouper, we have configured it to monitor this particular folder and process all incoming files. Now, we can set a number of filters on what we want to process. So we have the ability to process just the attachments. If we want, we can also add the email as part of the file. So actually render the email as a PDF and have it attached with the overall file as we're processing it. And then we can filter based on things like file size, extension type, pretty much anything you would like. And we can monitor entire mailboxes. So I could process everything coming to my mailbox, or we can process specific folders within a mailbox if we wanted to. So in this case, I'm monitoring this folder and I'm processing all incoming documents with PDF attachments. Let's look at a few of the files before we move on, just to see what we have in this mailbox. So here we have a non-disclosure agreement that was emailed over to us. So we're going to run that through Grouper and get that over into Box. If we look at a few other file types that we have here, we have a master services agreement that exists. And let's scroll through just a few more. Here we have a loan packet agreement. And if we scroll through the pages of this loan packet, you will notice that there's some sensitive data elements that exist within this loan packet. So here we have a social, here we have a date of birth. So as part of our migration, we're going to not only organize this content and identify what the document type is and who this document belongs to, we're also going to scan it for sensitive data elements like socials and dates of birth and auto redact those. And we'll show you that as we move through the process. So Grouper sitting in the background, it's monitoring our folder, it's processing these files as they come in, and after it processes those files, we can either delete the originals, we can leave them where they were, or we can move them to a new location if we want to. In my case, I'm just leaving them in the original location, but they have been processed and they have been moved over to Box. So what do they look like now? Well, you'll notice I've got a folder I created in Box called Email Contracts. And instead of having that just long list of random extensions, which is how they came into us, they're now organized by different folders or document types, as I would like to say. So we've got a couple of invoices that we found within that Grouper Demo Files folder within my Exchange environment. So if I open up that folder, you'll notice that we have one for Enid Parts and one for Standard Products. The files didn't come in with those names, they came in with random names. We renamed the PDF file based on data elements we extracted from the actual invoice itself. So if I open up the Enid Parts invoice, you'll notice in this case page 1 is the invoice itself, and I left that there on purpose just so you can see we can render the email, the body of the email as part of the document if we want to. So if there's some reason we need that as part of our system of record, we can absolutely do that. But here's the actual attachment for Enid Parts. So we went through, scanned it, and identified who this file belongs to. Now, we'll do a separate presentation where we'll talk a little bit more about extraction and what we can do from an invoice automation standpoint, where we can collect all the data elements off of this. And we can push those into Box, but we also can push those into a financial application. So we can collect the detail line item data, elements like invoice date, invoice number. But in this demo use case today, we were only focused on real simple, just extract something to use as our name field, and then scan it to see if we had any sensitive data elements that may have existed there, which in this case we did not. So if we go back to our document types that we moved over to Box, and I've got my loan packets up here. So remember when we opened those up earlier, we had some sensitive data elements, so we did go through and process those, identify that they were loan packets, and now we've identified that we have two, one for Felicity and one for Emma. Now in the original file names, I think they were just Felicity and Emma. We've added the last names here, so we have Felicity Gill and we have Emma Young. And we could always put these in index fields as well. We kept this real simple today for our demo and just use it as our file name. So if we go back to our Emma Young file, we open it up, we can see that on page 3, which is the page that auto highlights here, actually it's page 4, we have those data elements that we found, and we can see that Grouper has now gone through and auto redacted, and we've actually removed them in this case so that you can't even text search and find them accidentally. So they've actually been permanently scrubbed off the document. Now when we do things like this, we have the ability upon export to export multiple versions. So in a lot of use cases, we may export a redacted version to an area that would allow more users to have access to it, so less secure area of a repository. But then we may also want to redact or export an unredacted version to a area that has less security, more security, so that the non-redacted versions that you export out, maybe someone who has credit card clearance level within an organization would have access to it, but the redacted versions would be maybe company-wide access or a much larger audience. So you have control over that when you do your exports out of the system. So how does all this happen? So how do we go from unorganized structure, just a bunch of random PDF files and multiple emails to this organized structure, data that's been indexed? We've gone through and redacted out the sensitive information. Well, in the background, Grouper was doing a bunch of automated steps. So what were those steps? So here we go. So this is our email import for Box process that we created, and all of these steps here are non-attended, meaning they're automated steps that don't require human intervention. We do have the ability to add human steps like data review steps and other things, so we can have some checks and balances if needed, but in this case we didn't need those. So the first several steps you'll see here are all what we call conditioning steps. So we're collecting the content, and then we're going through and conditioning and optimizing it for text search so that we have the most accurate representation possible of the text related to the content, whether it was a scanned in image or an electronic file like a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, for our engine to go through and read. And once we get that, so we go through this conditioning step, we're then going to go through a classification step. So this is where we're organizing the content. So we're going through and looking at every document, in some cases every page, and identifying what this is. And we're leveraging things like supervised machine learning to train Grouper to understand what the different document types may be, and it's looking for patterns and flows and different types of characteristics within those documents while we're training it and learning, and then it applies the things that it's learned to the new documents that come through. So in this case, it went through, looked at those documents, and it knew how to identify an NDA versus an MSA. It knew what an invoice should look like, and it auto-classified those data elements. The next step that we have here is extract. So extract, when we build extractors, they can be leveraged across multiple processes. So we build a social security number extractor. You can use it in a number of different ways. So in this case, we use that social security number extractor to analyze all these files and identify where those data elements exist within it. We did the same thing for the date field, and in this case we actually trained a Grouper not only on how to find the date pattern, but how to find data elements around the date pattern or near the date pattern to identify that it's a date of birth and not an invoice date or a ship date or all the many other date types that we might find. So just find the date of births that exist. And then we're also looking for that name, whether it was the name for the company associated with maybe an invoice, or whether it was the name for a borrower for a loan within the loan packet. We're able to go through and extract those data elements, and we can output those to index fields, or we can output those as part of a folder name, or we can output those as part of the file name, or all of the above in some cases. Now we have a redact step here. This allows us to take anything that we've extracted and then redact it, give us that opportunity to do that. So in this case, we didn't redact the name field, just the social security number and the date of birth fields, as you saw in the presentation. So again, it goes through, analyzes and finds those, and then auto redacts them. Then our last step is our document export. So when we export the files out to Box, now they're organized. We can identify where we want to put them within Box. We can have multiple document export steps, so we could output the same file multiple times, multiple different locations. It's very configurable, in how you leverage and use these things. So, and all these steps that we're seeing here are configurable based on your business needs and the outcome that we're trying to achieve. All we wanted to accomplish in today's presentation was showing you pulling files automatically from an email system, organizing them and getting them into Box. And this process could be putting them in along with images coming in from other locations as well. So I hope this was beneficial. Thank you for your time.